Hey, team players, here we are for the next installment of our breakdown for what the fantasy football looks like. We're doing this in a PPR format with one quarterback, and this is what ESPN has ranked as their 51 through 60 players as of June 3rd. And Bob, as we discussed here, you better have a running back before you get into the 6th round because this territory is gross. And the way I build teams, I want to have 3 running backs before I get here because I don't want to touch any of the running backs anymore. And we look at them. James Conner, it's a miracle he didn't get hurt last year, but that team is trying to lose. They're not going to have a whole lot of leads. Same with Tampa's running back in White. Cam Akers, at sometimes last year, hated his coach, and then sometimes realized I need to run for my career. He had a great conclusion to the season, but do I really want to bank on the LA Rams for really anything? Because the Stafford arm is very concerning to me. And then I look at the wide receivers in this group. Not to mention we don't know if Kamara's even playing. I look at the receivers in this group. DJ Moore is paired with one of the most inaccurate quarterbacks in the league. And we think about last year about how whenever Baker was gun shy to throw him the ball because he didn't feel he was open, Justin Fields is the most gun shy of throwing the ball, period, in the NFL because he never thinks anyone's open. Watson, I think, is going to have a great year. He's probably the one I'm leaning to the hardest out of this group because Love connected with him a lot. When Love came in at the end of the games, he went to Watson, and Watson made things happen. Jerry Judy, it's does the Sean Payton experience treat him well? And then we get into Lamar Jackson and Kittle. And, Kittle is one of these guys that he had that great year, either his second year or his rookie year, and hasn't really done it for fantasy since. Yeah, he gives you great interviews, and he's a guy I'd love to have on my team, but he's not really delivering in fantasy all that much. And with McCaffrey there, I'm not seeing him getting the touchdown volume that he would. So I look at this overall, Bob, and saying, aside from Watson, where's the excitement from this group? And really combining with the last group, I think there's going to be a lot of these players sliding from the people that we'll be discussing in tomorrow's episode. But with that being said, who do you like here and who do you want to chat about?
Well, I think this is the round, again, where you're going to take a look at this and you're going to say, okay, I have my players, I have my running backs, I have my wide receivers. I'm willing to take a chance on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a person that will take a chance on a quarterback? Because potentially here you could be looking at Lamar Jackson, you could be looking at Joe Burrow, and you could be looking at the other quarterbacks that ESPN has listed earlier. Mm-hmm. And those are probably going to happen somewhere in this space. Mm-hmm. This is where you're going to win your league. This is where you're going to say to yourself, okay, if I want a quarterback, I'll take him. Mm-hmm. However, you have to be guaranteed that this quarterback is going to outproduce everybody else's quarterback by a large margin. Because what you don't want to happen is you don't want the production to fall off in your other players. So mm-hmm. Here is the spot where you're going to think about taking a boom player, somebody that could go off, or you're thinking about taking a second player in a position here that maybe you've let lacking. Mm-hmm. And the guy that really stands out to me amongst all of the weeds that is this grouping is James Conner, for the sheer purpose and sheer reason that he gets volume. Yes,
he does.
He gets hurt a lot, and that it cannot be an understatement. He missed 4 games totally last year, left 3 games with injuries last year, but through the last 6 games of the season, he was running back number 4. Mm-hmm. And when do you want to be winning?
Playoffs.
Through your playoffs. So you've got to get there. Mm-hmm. And so did you build a team that could get there? If so, James Conner is a great addition to your team.
You can never have too many running backs. That is true.
Now, is your team in a position to win, and it's continuing to win, and you need bye week people? Well, you're looking at a guy like Jerry Judy. Jerry Judy could clearly be a starter on a team. However, his situation goes by how Russell Wilson goes. If Russell Wilson ends up having a great career year, both Cortland Sutton and Jerry Judy could be going off.
And you're leaning that he's going to do that, right?
I'm leaning that he is going to do that. And if we look at just the targets last year for Judy, Judy was targeted on average about 6.7 times per game. Okay, and that translated as if we look at fantasy points wise, that translated into 137 fantasy points.
Okay,
so obviously he did more with his targets than Chris Godwin. He did around, and that was only slightly under T. Higgins. Okay.
Well, so good perspective.
T. Higgins missed 1-2 games, and Jerry Judy missed 2 games. And so it's a 10-point difference between Higgins and Judy. So that's on any given week, that's only about point-something points per week over across.
Yeah, that's not much at all, yeah.
Right? And so when you look at this and you want to look at, hey, does this player spike at all? And you're saying T. Higgins never went over 20 points.
Yeah, very consistent.
Jerry Judy had 1 game of 20 points, 25 points. He had a 3. And he had 2 1-point games. And that was when Russell Wilson was really sucking at the beginning of the season.
There's a lot of that.
Now, as you go further down into the season, you're starting to see 6.5, 25.3, 7.6, 11.7, 3.8, 19.3. So you're starting to see when Russell Wilson starts to cook, there's a little bit more things for Jerry Judy. Now, I'm not saying that you like we always say, you can't. You know players are going to get hurt. You can predict that players are going to get hurt, but you can't predict which ones are going to get hurt.
Except for Tyreek Hill.
And if I'm building my roster out of the players that are on this team, I would be very, very comfortable slotting in James Conner or Jerry Judy. The only question with James Conner is the injury. When I want to slot him in, will he be available for me to slot in? And for Jerry Judy is the consistency of Russell Wilson. Now, as far as that goes for Christian Watson target-wise is nowhere near.
No, but he did stuff with it.
Nowhere near the top of the targets. But when you look at what he did with his targets, like you said.
And LaFleur's not an idiot. He's a very good coach. They're going to figure this out. Just because Rodgers hated him doesn't mean LaFleur's not going to feature him.
There was a beautiful stretch run of 4 games where he had 28, 17, 17, 21, and then he fell off a cliff. So I'm more of on the Jerry Judy bandwagon where I'm going to hopefully get a consistent 10, 11 points out of a guy I'm drafting in this round. But again, Christian Watson coming out and being that big boom player is exactly what you're looking for out of players in this type of round here. I'm staying away from Rachaad White.
I think so. We talked about Tampa.
I think you have to avoid all players from Tampa, even when he was given the ball. And when we talked about Tampa in our last videos, I said this is a player to look out for, but it's not a player that you really want in fantasy football because we've seen what has happened to Tampa, and it's just not a good situation. Another player.
There's no way Rachaad White leads their team in carries. He's just not talented enough.
Well, and another player that I'm staying away from most likely is Cam Akers, just because there was, Sean McVay seems to love him or hate him. And so
when he loves him, he goes off.
If he really loves him, then that's great. But let some other manager take care of that. And another player I'm probably staying away from, despite how much I like this player, is Alvin Kamara, is that he had a terrible average running yards last year. And he never really got above 60 yards rushing at all at any point in time last year. Plus, you have the ambiguity and the problem of, is this finally going to hit him in terms of the court situation, in terms of, what he did to another human, in Las Vegas. Plus, you have Williams in the backfield. I mean, he got caught in a gambling scheme too. So what's going to happen? I mean, I just don't see I just don't see why you would want to carry him on your team with that many question marks. I think that the question marks of Kamara.
Well, I can give you an answer for that.
I think the question marks of Kamara and the question marks of James Conner, in my mind, Kamara, if he plays, is probably going to have a resurgence in some way. But I think that the situation is not built out for him to be extremely successful. And so I'm staying away from him.
See, I actually, and all off-field stuff aside, this is not encouraging or condoning or endorsing what he did. I actually think if he gets suspended, he's a better pick. If he's out for the 6 games, and I know he will be healthy and reared up as a running back, entering the playoff push of fantasy, and I believe my team is already solid, I think he's the kind of guy you do store on your roster. You're going to be able to put him on the IR slot in the ESPN's format. And then, boom, next thing you know, I have basically just added a potential stud for the 8-game stretch. Now, Grant, a little bit of this is going off of his name. He was hurt last year. He was tweaked. But I look at the way a Derek Carr offense works. If you have a little bit of scat back to you in a Derek Carr system, there will be room because of how much Carr chucks the ball downfield. And one thing Kamara has is scat backism. Now, the question is, by the time we get there, has the rookie that New Orleans taken the job? And there's a very good chance that both him and Williams are wasted picks. And I just want to disclose that. So this is a spot where you can come out and say, hey, I think Kamara is going to be the guy when he comes back and he's going to win me a league. Or you're going to have completely just wasted your 6th-round pick with no middle ground. Like, I don't think there's a middle ground at all in it.
This is what people did when they were looking, and we have a similar situation when you look at
this is what I did with Hopkins last year.
This is what you did at Hopkins last year, but you didn't draft him in the 6th round.
I did in 10th.
You hope to get him in the 8th, 9th, or 10th. But from name recognition, if a person is drafting and they're looking at this board and they're saying, okay, Cam Akers or Alvin Kamara.
Well, it depends how much I need him. Like if I need him to be my number 2 starter, it has to be Cam Akers.
But this is what I'm saying is I'm looking at the board and I'm saying out of the potential options that are here, if I'm needing a running back, I'm logistically saying
you're scared. If you need a starting running back out of this crop,
I'm scared and I'm not drafting these ones. If I'm needing a starting running back, I'm taking Jahmyr Gibbs if he's not already taken, or I'm taking Miles Sanders if he's not already taken. Because we
haven't said Swift yet.
Swift is in an interesting situation.
To me, he's standing out as like, how have we not said Swift yet?
So you look at it and you say to yourself, okay, how do I rank these? Well, obviously, out of this list, I think not putting Joe Burrow as one in out of this specific group of players, I think is silly. Joe Burrow is going to be throwing the ball a lot.
He is. I'd still rather have Lamar.
I wouldn't, for the sheer fact that I know that Lamar did well in 3 or 4 games last year, but I know Joe Burrow is going to do well across the
You also know Burrow's playing every game.
But that's something. What we're doing here is a little experiment, and we're just ranking these players on this list.
No, I think there's a very good argument that saying Burrow should be ahead of Lamar. And he's the first true pocket quarterback that's come up, isn't it?
And to just say and just saying that, we're
their schedule is so. Again, the AFC North is such a cakewalk in their schedule. Burrow easily could throw the most touchdowns in this league
now. And this is a scary.
Burrow could be MVP when it's all said and done, without too much squinting. Look at the schedule Cincinnati plays, and you're going to say, who do they actually play? They play the other 3 division winners. They play Kansas City, Buffalo, and that's it. So, you think Jacksonville's giving them a run for their money, or the Colts? And I don't think, aside from maybe the Steelers, I don't think there's anyone in this division that Cincinnati's worried about. I mean, they destroyed Baltimore. They absolutely destroy Baltimore. And, yeah, dude, I think Joe Burrow's the league MVP. Like, if I had a bet right now, he's getting it. Because I'm also 100% sure the AFC North is getting the bye.
And I do want to say this. When I was looking up the stats, I stated that Jerry Judy had 138, fantasy points. But that was in a standard league. So
Okay, yeah.
Going back on my word a little bit here, you're looking at Jerry Judy now at 22, sitting at 204 points, and Chris Godwin is sitting at 228 points. So the volume helped Chris Godwin a lot. And so those numbers were a little weird when we were looking at them. My device here switched it up a little bit, but also in that vein, the statement still stands. What I said about T. Higgins and what I said about Jerry Judy is still
they're still like right next to each other.
Jerry Judy was at 22. T. Higgins is at 18. So 232 points for.
You give me a number 22 receiver with a system that's about to dramatically get better. It's really hard to say he shouldn't be the first pick.
So you have it's still a 30-point difference. Whatever that system was that we use there, you're just upping those numbers.
Yeah.
By like 100.
Yeah, but not for the running back. You're doing it for the receivers.
For the running backs. Yeah. So like when I look at this and I say, okay, Terry McLaurin, when we were talking about Terry McLaurin, Terry McLaurin was still number 14.
No, Terry McLaurin's a beast.
Right? And so you look at it and you say, okay, and I'm bringing these numbers back up to look at DJ Moore here. When DJ Moore was playing, 199 points.
I feel so bad for DJ Moore.
Like, he's in a bad situation.
He's in such a bad situation because he's in a place that can only truly throw a deep ball, which for the people out there to realize, a deep ball basically is you just throw it and hope your receiver can adjust good enough. That's what Lamar Jackson can do. DJ Moore's not that kind of receiver. He's actually the harder kind to make. He can get open in space, but it requires accurate throws in there. And for the last year and this year too, he's not going to have any love there. Sure, he might get a check in Chicago, but he is never going to be seen as someone, even in the lights, as Amari Cooper, which I believe he's much more talented than Amari Cooper. He's just not going to be able to get the ball thrown.
And here's the thing too: the statement that we made about Christian Watson in terms of the statistics here is Christian Watson ended the season in a PPR league with 164 points. That stretch run is still the same, but you're looking at 32, 21, 21, 24 instead of the 20 points, 17 points, 17 points. But the rest of the games that he played there, I mean, you're looking at 8, 10, 2, 16. So there was a lot.
So he's basically Ayuk. Would you rather have him or Ayuk?
I mean, at this point in time, looking at,
I think I'd rather have Ayuk.
Who's getting the ball? Ayuk was the 15th best wide receiver last year with 227 points. And his stretch run with Brock Purdy was actually better than Christian, was better across, But here's the thing about fantasy points too, is that if you're getting Christian Watson's best game, 32 points, at the same time you're getting Debo's best game, or you're getting Jerry Judy's best game, and then the next game they all suck at the same time, you're definitely not winning.
You went 1-1 instead of 2-0.
You're definitely not winning a game. So balance is really important. So these guys here,
that's why high floors matter.
These guys here are really interesting. And we didn't talk about George Kittle. And when we take a look at George Kittle, he's the guy.
How can you trust him?
He's at 200 points last year, 200 points. And he's had a couple of games where he was on fire on all cylinders, but he had 2 games where he was out. And that was at the beginning of
How did he do with McCaffrey?
With McCaffrey, he did perfectly fine.
Oh, he did? I thought he was the one who took a dip. I guess it was Debo who did.
He had 21 points in week 7, 12 in week 8. His week 10 and 12 and 13 sucked, but the rest of the games were above 10 points. And so... Yeah,
but 10 points out of a tight end, I can get that same thing 6 rounds from now. I can go get Cole Kmet.
And that's the thing that you have to ask yourself about when you're looking at these guys and you were saying, okay, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson are obviously head and shoulders above this group because they're the quarterbacks and they're going to obviously score more points.
Yeah.
When you look at the skill position players and you say, okay, well, where does James Conner rank in terms of PPR rankings? Obviously, he doesn't catch the ball, but he was the 19th best running back last year, missing 7 games.
That's hard to do.
Well, parts of 7 games in 4 total games.
Yeah.
He had 200 total points, and his quarterback situation hasn't changed. The team is basically the same, but they've improved the offensive line.
They did.
What do you want out of a running back? Well, you want an improved offensive line, especially a running back who's going to get the ball. So if I'm looking at any players in here to say,
did they draft one?
Yeah, I believe they did.
Okay.
Yeah. So if I'm looking at all these players on this list, the guys that I would probably want on my team after Burrow and Lamar Jackson would be Connor and Judy. And that's how I would rank this list. It would be Burrow, Jackson, Connor, Judy. then this would be a reasonable spot to take a tight end. And if Kittle was there, I would think about that. So, I mean, I know you don't like it, but, you know, Burrow, Jackson, Connor, Judy, Kittle. And then that's where I also look at Christian Watson because of the unpredictability in Jordan Love's situation. So we have Burrow, Jackson, Connor, Judy, Kittle, Watson. And then I'm taking DJ Moore. Who knows what you're going to get there? I probably wouldn't take him at all. And then you have 3 undraftables for me in Kamara, White, and Akers. And I would rank them in that order.
Yeah, I don't have Akers as undraftable, but obviously my list is going to be a little bit different. I do agree. Like I said, I think Burrow's going to be the league MVP. So taking him first out of this group makes sense because Lamar is going to get hurt and not want to play at some point. Again, he was capable of playing in the playoff game and the 2 weeks preceding it and chose not to. Maybe now he's got money. Maybe he will play, but you don't normally wring that out of someone. So therefore, giving the edge to Burrow is not a stretch to me. I do have Judy in the 3rd spot over Connor. Again, you know, the injury thing is real. And if you're looking at having to get a starting running back from the 6th round on, it is incredibly scary, and I wouldn't want to do it. But I would take as the next one on this group would be Akers because I like running backs that turn it on the second half of the year. You saw my argument for Najee. You saw my argument for Dobbins. And Cam Akers is in this category. And if it does come to pass that Stafford isn't healthy, they're going to have to hand the ball off. And these guys do not have a number 2 running back. The Rams do not have one. So you almost get guaranteed usage out of a guy in the 6th round. I like that. Kamara to me and Watson are both wild cards. I'm going to take Watson more because I know he's going to be on the field every play. He's a younger player. They give it to him. Kamara could, quite frankly, be out of football. He also could win you a league. Like, there's a span that could go all over this guy. So I guess by default, Kamara becomes my second last pick, as Rachaad White certainly is. And then that puts Kittle in the other slot that's remaining. So that's how I like it, guys. We would love to do a best ball league with all of our fans out there, and we're going to be doing a bunch of them. So leave your information in the comments. We'll set something up, and we will go from there. And if you haven't already, click subscribe because we're going through all of ESPN's 200, and we'll be talking fantasy from this point on until kickoff.